Hello everyone, in the sixth session of Accounting Information System Development course, we're talking about Data Flow Diagram Part 1. What is Data Flow Diagram? Data Flow Diagram, or what usually called the FD, is a technique that diagrams the business processes and the data that pass among them. The FD illustrates how data is processed by the systems in terms of input and output. Data flow diagram mainly focuses on the processes or activities that are performed. Data flow diagram has a level to help you organize and categorize the data. The level of the FD consists of context diagram, level 0 diagram, level 1 diagram, level 2 diagram, and level N diagram. In this session, we will focus on level 0 diagram. The level 0 diagram shows all the major processes of the system from use case, how they relate to each other, and to store the data. A business process only have one level 0 data flow diagram. Now, I will explain the common data flow diagram notation. First, process. A process is an activity or function that is performed for some specific business reason. Processes can be manual or computerized, but in this course we focus with computerized process that relate with the systems. The process in data flow diagram can be taken from the use case that has been created in use case diagram. Second, data flow. Data flows show what inputs go into each process and what outputs each process produces. Each process has at least one input and one output data flow. Every data flow should be named with a noun and without a verb. Usually, you can use attributes in entity relationship diagram for become information in data flow. Third, data store. A data store is a collection of data that is stored in some way. Every data store is named with a noun and is assigned an identification number and a description. All data stores must have at least one input data flow. An entity in entity relationship diagram can become data store in data flow diagram. The last is external entity. An external entity is a person, organization unit, or system that interact with the system. The external entity typically corresponds to the actor identified in the use case. External entities provide data to the system or receive a data from the system. Maybe you will find a different version of data flow diagram notation, but remember, in this Practicum class, we use this notation. Here is an overview of the data flow. We can note that there are illegal data flows and corrected data flows. Can we conclude? In data flow diagram, you can connect data flow without some processing occurring. It means data can move from external entity to external entity directly, or from external entity to data store directly. Data flow must go through a process. If you want to depict external entity to the data store, from external entity, data flow must connect to the process, and from process, data flow will send it into data store. Another common mistake in data flow diagram when the outputs from one processing step don't match its inputs. This situation called illegal data processes. There are three kinds of illegal data process. First, black hole. A processing step may have input flows but no output flows. Second is miracle. A processing step may have output flows but no input flows. The last is gray hole. A data flow has input and output, but input is insufficient to produce output, or its input could not produce the output shown. The following is an example case of sportation. And this is the use case diagram of sportation. All of use case in this diagram will be used as a process in data flow diagram. So, this is the data flow diagram level 0 of sportation. How to create this data flow diagram? First, you can draw each process based on the use case diagram. Second, determine external entities for the whole process. In this data flow diagram, there are member, core admin, and financial staff. Third, you can draw all data store. After that, you can start add input and output data flows. I will going to explain process 1 in this data flow diagram. We can see member give information in input data flows to the process. That information will be sent into database to be stored. Then, what the user get back? User will get back the output in data flow, same as like information that user input before. Now, look at member data store. Member data store, they provide information to other process. You can see in that diagram, data store member gave information to process 2. So, in sportation DFD process, data store can send information into other process. Should be noted that data flow diagram of sportation using different notation versions, but in your assignment and a project, you have to use the notation as I explained before in part of the FD notation.